All right. All right, let's get started. I'll start in prayer, please. I was talking about today, and he said the problems are real, is that we won't be overwhelmed because Jesus will give us peace and take care of. Wish that for us. I also wish to give us strength and power to help the only earth that we've got. In God's name we pray, amen. All right. Okay, somebody else. All right, so let's watch the first video. Pull her up. And the first video is called There Can Be a Better Future. I believe you'll start seeing the folks from sorry, I'm gonna go to the next one. I don't know.
There is
9.
respect in this new world. Well, we know already that it isn't a case of going permanently so. So the question is, what do we do with this turning point? Unfortunately, in the United States, where I live, it's been taken as an opportunity to roll back environmental pollution of our air and our water that actually makes us more vulnerable to many health-related issues, including the stimulus package is being used to shore up the fossil fuel industry. But in many other places, they're being accelerated as we respond to the pandemic. For example, cities are increasing their pedestrian and walkable areas in downtown. Air France, I just read, 50% in order to get government support. Other cities are investing in green infrastructure. Here's the thing, the new clean energy economy does not necessarily in the United States already, there are more jobs in the solar energy industry alone. Not only that, but per megawatt of electricity produced where I live, energy, wind and solar here in Texas, produces 8 times more jobs than if that same energy is generated. Fastest growing new jobs in the United States as a whole are either in the solar energy industry or the whole idea that we have to destroy the economy and throw everybody out of work to wean ourselves off fossil are opportunities, but those opportunities have to be offered to people because people need. We've all realized that maybe we don't have to travel so much. I've spent transitioning about 80% of the talks I give to virtual talks, and even up until just a few months, can't do one of those. And I would say, please try. And often they would say, okay, but sometimes they would say, still no. All of the talks that said no to me the last few months have come back during the quarantine and said, hey, do it? And I said, yes, of course, I'd love to. So there's definitely personal choice. We can live a different way. Maybe we can value things in our family or have to be traveling as much or eating out as much or living. But the bottom line is this, what we most lack, not only when it comes to fixing climate change, what we most lack is a vision of a better future. We're confronted on both sides of what will happen to the world if we don't fix climate change, or visions of the terrible things that will happen if we do fix climate change. But the reality is, when it all comes down to it, we value the same things. The health and the safety of our friends and our families and our community, a better world. So there was an amazing book that was written by Christiana Figueres, who of course was the architect of the Paris Agreement. She went out and she wrote this book. And this book, more than anything, entries and news articles I've also read too, but this book, more than anything, offers that vision of by just reading a few of my favorite extracts. Here's what a better future it would address zoonotic diseases, it would address the destruction of ecosystems, and it would the air is moist and fresh, even in cities. It feels a lot like walking through a forest and very like the air is cleaner than it has been since before the Industrial Revolution, thanks to homes and buildings produce their own electricity, and because there's no combustion cost, energy is essentially more efficiently used than ever. For the developing world, the billion people start of the 21st century now have energy generated by their own rooftop solar modules. Communities. People who struggle to get clean water can now provide it to their families. Children can operate more effectively. Overall, we've successfully reorganized to live in a more localized way. For most people, the new way has turned out to be yes. We realized that the perpetuation of our species was about far better. It was, and I love that they use these words, it was about being good and of each other, because we humans are living things too. The fate of humanity, she writes, we were thinking only about the species survival, but at some point we understood our humanity. Humanity itself was only ever as doomed as, and vanquishing that belief was our true legacy. We've been offered is the opportunity to reset our values, not what they are, but remembering what they truly are. Those of us who are Christians, who we are is based on what we believe. We believe that we've been given a new heart. We believe that we truly desire to walk in the good works that God. And so for us, this is an opportunity, I think, to remember who we are and to
be not afraid.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So COVID-19 has disrupted all of our lives in the last capacity to change how we can live. What do you think?
We have Zoom and changes in several ways.
It's funny, it's now with church who said, oh, thank goodness don't have to drive down in the evening and do. I was
Exactly. A lot of people have. Bob was a pioneer, I guess.
Yes.
Was doing it before. In thing. What else?
Let's highlight one that necessity is the mother of invention, of course. Changes we had to make in order to keep functioning as a church in our job. Humanity. But it also struck me in watching that thing, you can wait and let it become a crisis. And of course, by then it's too. But even if you do, I've always thought that starving people make the worst environmentalists. That when you're on the edge, you're not thinking about the plants and animals around you. You think family, and it becomes there's a benefit to and some luxury in terms of time still to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it can at least come to agreement that we have an issue, that being proactive and getting out technology, for example, for solar panels starts making it more and more economically feasible. And didn't make economic sense for a while.
Economic sense, were you surprised when she said more jobs?
We've always known that. And there is a tendency for people to don't introduce change. That's fair. I mean, I'm that. Change is already here. That's the message. attempt to get out in front of it and actually have a say in how that change occurs in our lives
Mhm.
and losing our humanity in the process.
Mhm.
It's difficult, but the people, the organizations at dealing with change and at handling it come out the best. Hopefully that's gonna be us, although I'm not sure we really know yet. If we do or not.
I hope everybody's spoken. I hear that there are more jobs in solar and wind than there are in fossil fuel.
Me too. I didn't know that.
That's what they're apples to apples and all, but, yeah.
Yeah, I would like really know if that takes into consideration car sales and mechanics and, you know, those type. And I mean,
I mean, 'cause it is, go ahead.
I think it was, I think Kathmandu, Nepal, for the first time in a remember, they could see Mount Everest. They had not a period of time. I'm not sure what that long period of time is right now. I can't
Just
remember.
because
No.
Is it wood smoke?
Whether it
Pollution.
was pollution,
Oh.
whether it's, I'm not sure. That they were able to see it for the first time for X number of years.
The Kathmandu, their atmosphere is the worst I have ever experienced. The valley
Okay.
and the pollution just kind of hangs there, and it is.
Ellensburg in the winter.
Wow. And you've seen these villages too, where they've taken every piece of wood
Oh,
for
Hades, Hades like that.
Hades like that. Oh, gosh, yeah. And I think you're absolutely right, and we should be the leaders, though. I mean, we've got the money to do something now.
I love that vision, you know, that impoverished place. So they're not having to burn all that, you know.
Mhm.
And think of localized, you know, our whole, the whole economic turmoil that we find now in part has to a global economy
Mhm.
and our supply chains. And plus, there's also technology where, you know, you rely on your supply chain, you receive it today, you sell cost. It's a business strategy, but at the same time, you've got to be there for you, and you can't control global affairs. But if it's have a dictator halfway around the world controlling your lights,
Mhm.
you know, there's.
I was happy to see in the that infrastructure bill, they have something ridiculous. $1 billion dedicated to battery in this country. So, yeah, that whole thing, oh, gosh. And I think, do you think it helped continue impediment? She talked about they took away protections for the environment. You think of anything that showed us where our weak parts were? I think you were buying things overseas was a very big weakness shown by COVID. So, yeah. All righty.
no magic threshold. It's with no consequences. Imagine if you could smoke 9,900 100% fine, and then if you just smoke one more, that would give you lung cancer. We know that that's a number, but the more cigarettes you smoke, the greater the impacts on your lungs and the greater lung cancer. In the same way, we know produce, and the faster we produce it, the more dangerous the impacts. Back in almost every country in the world got together and agreed to stabilize the levels of heat trapping and dangerous human interference with the climate system. But the problem, some would say that we've already reached it. If they live on crumbling, if they live in low-lying coastal areas or islands that are already being inundated, it is already dangerous. But for others, especially people who live in richer countries with more resources at their disposal, if the price of food doubles, if they're to pay it, for those people, they might say, oh, well, it's not dangerous yet. So that's what was arguing over what was dangerous before finally coming together in Paris and agreeing that they would limit global average temperature and pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. Now, no, they're not. If we end up at 1.499 degrees, it doesn't mean the impacts today. If we end up at 2.01 degrees, it doesn't mean that we're going to hell in a handbasket. We might as well eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow we die. No. Scientifically is, the more carbon we produce, the greater the risks. The more carbon we reduce, and the faster we do so, the better off the magic threshold. Some amount of impacts are too late to, or they become inevitable. It's kind of like we've been smoking a pack of cigarettes for years. Damage is already permanent. But we know, and I know this for sure because this is what I studied, of difference between a future where we continue to depend on fossil fuels versus a future where we as soon as possible. And the difference is not the survival of our planet long after we're gone. The difference is the survival of humans, and particularly the survival of the poorest and most vulnerable. Headlines that are saying that carbon emissions this past April are at the global scale compared to where they were the year before. But you've also dip in air pollutants and in carbon emissions is just temporary. Because as the quarantine passes, that's already happening in China. So the total impact on overall carbon emissions is likely to be pretty, because again, what matters is total carbon, right? It's as if we've been putting every month since the dawn of the industrial era. And month by month by month, that brick has been getting, until now we're putting a monster brick on the pile every month. And then for 1 month, smaller, and the next month it's right back up to its regular size. So you can see are not going to have a long-term effect on, say, well, but look at what we did. We shut down the entire economy, school, caused enormous suffering in some of the poorest places in the world, which is ongoing today. We did all of that, a single 17% smaller brick on the pile. Does that mean it's hopeless that we can never fix climate change? That could be the opposite. Why? Well, because these reductions were achieved. What does non-sustainable means? It means we can't sustain it long term. We can't keep people out of work, keep children out of school, fine or imprison people for leaving their homes. Those changes are not sustainable. But here's the thing. Imagine reduction in global emissions had been achieved through sustainable methods, like what? Like fossil fuels with clean energy and changing our behavior. Imagine if the carbon emission reductions methods, we would be almost halfway, let's be generous, percent of the way to our 2030 goal in a matter of 6 weeks. So if anything, this gives me hope that when disaster really stares us, just truly do make a difference. But that brings us to our last question.
Oh, they took out the Scottish. I know, I love the accent. Oh.
So in that transition to a clean energy, concept of a just transition is key, because there's many areas where town is based on extraction of oil and gas or coal, and many families have disproportionately paid the price. As my mountaintop removal coal mining in Appalachia, where they literally cut the tops off, that pollutes the local water, leading to increased rates of everything from among the very families who are working in those mines. A just transition. This does have to be central to our transition at the local and for the country. And the good news is there are organizations in Canada, UK and more that are working on the concept of a just transition. And in the response to some of this, we've seen people saying you have to account for your climate impacts in order to get the. We've seen in Canada, for example, they're actually creating new jobs for out-of-work oil and gas workers, capping off all old oil wells that are leaking methane into the atmosphere. Offered, but it should be offered to everyone, because we're only going to reach that by
The question is, how do you make this change? What do you think people can sustainable changes? You know, reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 75%. And they are an oil-rich. That's how they made a huge amount of money. So it's going to be quite a challenge. Individuals, you think?
So how do they accomplish that? Because they're that.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I guess too, course, is because we would like to move on from here. People willing to work on in a community we can do to help, not just climate change. We've got our we've started, but the enough to do it right. We need to have more people involved. For example, getting groups and to talk to building and grounds about things that they. One of the things we'd like to do is ask if people would be willing to be. I live in fear of being on another committee, so please don't think that's what I'm asking.
Good morning.
Just kind of a loose base group of people to discuss ideas quarterly, to think of things that we can do to, for example, decrease our, as a church, provide information to the congregation, are in a vacuum for information, and we can do it in a very respectful. One of the things I've heard from people, especially in this 4 weeks, that it's to everybody in this congregation. And also to encourage I was very impressed that with the whole discussion of the new furnace. And very doable. That's what kills me, is these things are also doable. That's one of the reasons we got to get together in the future, so. But also too, if you, I think prayer is an extremely important thing.
Right.
Well, but I climate action plan, so I think it's more than what we do as individuals. I think that's vocal, being vocal. And it's one thing faith group is that some of them have, joined in on volunteer on a climate action plan, and I tried, so they not a technology person, so I know they're, whether it's occurred already, but they're doing another presentation of it as it occurred, or, but, so I don't know whether. They but
Has there been any discussion on solar panels?
Hi.
I know that's out of the blue, but
No, yeah.
better, being in the building industry, we've seen every 2 years. And they're well meant, and I describe it as, kind of a J curve in terms of return on investment. As they give you a palette of options to choose from that earn you points, kind of increase the points, but they also increase the options to choose from. Some of them are very make sense. Ductless heat pumps, for example, are wonderful. They're kind of, they're contemplating getting rid of them as valid point accumulators, but I get to things like they're coming up with a system now where there's a oil that wraps around your sewer pipe to try to recapture heat. And
That was
okay, theoretically, great. You might get a handful of BTUs out of it, but then you go to the bathroom and turn on the window, they
Make some
go.
cookies.
So there's actually more to do, I think, with personal. And secondly, and not to, we're affordable housing, because every time a new energy code comes up, we're adding anywhere from construction of a home. So there's a reality there that also has to be recognized. 80s and 90s, Bonneville used to sponsor Super Good Sense homes. And I know that the PUD still does some of that, but it seems to me these with older homes would be a great investment. Second, sources, and it used to be that solar panels were too costly enough. But that's changing. They're half of what they used to be. And as the industry expands and the efficiencies of production and capacitors to retain the energy so you can use it through the night gets more efficient.
Yeah.
And I see those as great steps forward.
And I feel about that the city's thinking about it, and they will be thinking about panels that's out there. And I think it behooves us linked into it.
Mhm.
And
Solar panels on your home now?
There's an example right across the street. on that house over there.
And he speaks, we talked to him Friday about that, and he's very big on them. And I don't know, I penciled them out for my home once and didn't think it. Hydro is very difficult to compete with, in effect.
They took out the.
Oh, yeah, the Bonneville. No, there's nothing local, but yeah, Bonneville is.
Relatively cheapest in the nation, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
but we're also even a lot of climate refugees in
gosh,
the
you're coming from
Northwest. I mean, when you think about it, that's kind of part of it.
One reason at that time was like 20 years old, and so it's got what, another 5 years. More than that, I'm not sure how much, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's all, would all have to replace the existing roof when the time comes. And
yeah.
that was that. You replace the roof, I'll check it out again. It's probably more.
What? So, why haven't they come up with a way to deal with the roof, but just having the solar panel be a whole,
So
you don't have to worry about leaky roofs.
There are solar. When we were building our house, we looked at all those things and it was really hard here to make much sense of the.
But it's chicken and the egg too. I mean, they'll start getting cheaper if more
More
people
people
start
buy it,
buying them.
And traditional energy sources can only start, they're not gonna build more dams, and the dams there's an increase in maintenance, so there's gonna be costs. Point at which the costs crisscross.
And that's, well, I think, like one of our PUD area, we saw him at a party, that was his big push, is he says, we're gonna need more. So,
Yeah,
but his point was that doing solar here was nice because it was kind of what's going on. He said what they needed to be doing is building the solar fields in the east. Power transmitted from there, so you just put it right in the grid and send it over
There you
here.
go.
It's a lot more. It's a lot to buy a field in eastern Washington than it is to try to build one here.
So the dams are like 90 years old or
Yes,
whatever.
but then he says every time he brings them up. So he's trying to find somebody. He wants to leave. He's been on. And he wants.
if
somebody
that's
else
the
to run.
local PUD, yeah, well, Ken Hayes, I think will probably.
But I mean, and then again, to Martha's point, the only way people talk about and say, we demand that you find.
Well, I think the idea is that the local PUDs, I mean, everybody who's buying their power from. I mean, they're the ones who don't want to do it. I mean, they could lead everybody to do it by just saying, we're doing this, but that's not. On their dams.
There is a man in Squim who Valley does tours of all his energy efficient within his house. That's available. Yeah, I think.
Who is that?
I have a friend from.
A name, and I can say that's there, but somebody's name was totally plugged, blah, blah. But the other, what else was it said? I'm very interested in doing like a church, just talking about how to reduce plastic waste. Something that's both things, a polluting thing and a manufacturing. I would really like to pursue that church as just a little mission. Few things. The other was just food-based things, not to waste food or have a meatless meal. A potluck that's all based on meatless things as Because
Well, that emphasizes to me that we need a that can collect and I'd be happy to works it, but I think once a quarter is enough and I need help. And
Did Port Angeles find any way to recycle?
I don't.
Well,
Not yet.
I was thinking about that because Squim has 2 places. Figure out a receptacle of some sort. Stan and I could take once a month or twice a month and recycle all the glass from the church. Be kind of messy. I mean, we'd have to set up some rules like
Where's it at? Because I was. where am I?
there's 2 places. There's
Yeah, we have-
Evergreen and what's the other place? So I think.
I think there
some-
could be a business that crushes the bottle. Like make it sand into
Yeah,
sand.
I don't know where recycling this stuff, but we have taken our glass there before. Little thing that we could be doing.
yeah, I'd like to see something in the monthly. That's always an item, Creation Care this month. Class.
Okay, who's on that committee? Are we mission?
I need somebody.
Okay, chip in there, and it doesn't always make it in.
And I wanted to get this survey this week from the environment. And it's about Washington legislature. One of the first things Washington is doing when it comes to combating climate change and mitigating its effects on to vote, very good, not sure. And climate change. And one that we really how alarmed are you that wildlife are losing their habitats because of climate change? So I thought after I heard everybody today, I'd feel.
I got that too.
Did you? Yeah, I wondered if everybody in the world got it.
Conservancy, so I wonder if that.
Me too.
Yeah.
And Sierra Club.
Yeah.
I think
They're
it
usually more
helps,
militaristic than the other two.
especially Washington legislature, of course, big on climate change, but I issues before the legislature this year about climate change or I'm not sure.
I just wish they wouldn't send me. You needed to print on paper when you're.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh. Stuff's not blamed, yeah. Like
Join the Wildlife Foundation thing and we'll send you a. Quit making and send.
Oh, and how many name labels do you have?
Oh,
Anyway.
One of the issues I think in
Yep,
our usage of water.
Yep.
We tend to be gonna have plenty of water here, but no. I try to wash my hands or get my hands wet and then turn my hands and then turn it on again, but
well, Canada's, or use your, if you have one, use your dishwasher every day as opposed to washing your. Much more efficient than letting the tap run as you wash dishes or rinse dishes. Out of that, and it seems to work out.
Interesting.
I know, because they have this cup of. Like, oh, I remember that. Okay.
Funny when you're brushing your teeth.
No, Barney would be upset.
It's young, they say, and I never let the water run.
hey, Mark, I'm wet. The church will allow us, but to put out a sign up list in the fellowship center. I mean,
But please
Yes,
write me, email me if anybody from here too. If there are people who would like to do it.
And Don, do you think from building and grounds, I mean, if we wanted to, which would seem to be like a starting point, because I mean, otherwise I think a lot of these questions about
Yeah.
things the church would do, I don't know that we have enough to know whether we should do any things, because, you know, a lot of things question, are they cost effective and, you know, how much energy?
I think it's being investigated.
Okay.
I'm not the one doing it, but yeah, I think someone on the committee. And now who could do an energy audit, how much the audit itself will cost us.
I mean, I think it's not an unworthy goal to be at least have our facility, you know, to have the luxury of spending that money to make the building efficient. I mean, but you know, how much do you do and how much makes sense?
Those windows were just too expensive to replace or something, weren't you?
I was. Office,
Okay.
and what we've got here really are thermal. Better from a fit standpoint, they're not exactly like what I've got at home. That would be, yes, thermal blinds for the office and maybe.
Yeah, we used to have this in our house, now we face south, and we just, you know, we got those blinds. Yeah.
The ones that I've got at home fit really tight. These are kind of.
Side, yeah.
And the ones I've got at home on all four sides are. And you can get those kinds of blinds. A lot of light through or no light through. They come in a lot of. There may be some difference in how thermal they are too, but they're kind of spending. And we're getting low on money. Session meeting, and I think maybe it should have come up sooner, but savings, but we're going behind a little bit every month too, so.
Right. What I do doesn't mean that we need to do it tomorrow, but I mean, I think, you know, if we have a plan and long-term, we budget in things.
I'd like to leave everybody on a positive note too, because I think that we're going to have great strong that's going to fix this. Be not afraid, right? From her book, number 5, you might enjoy that one. Everyone needs energy. And the things in parentheses are page numbers. You can just ignore those. The rewiring of American energy fruit. Then do not feel guilty. Is paralyzing, but hope and is energizing. That, and I thank you for coming to this.
But thank you for doing it.
I also say too, she had a lovely, something that we can go off, it's kind of a. Jesus says, by this everyone. And the Apostle Paul amplifies this instructing his is faith expressing itself through love. Climate, caring for the poor and the needy, those most affected by the, as well as creation itself. It is not only our response Christians believe God made us to be. Thank you so much.